Hi everyone, I'm going to take you for a tour of the Australian curriculum. So we're going to have a look at the Australian curriculum website. If you click on curriculum here, you can find the link to English. Now you'll find that it's set out into year levels and strands as well as connections to general capabilities and cross-curriculum priorities. But for this particular task, there's not really much need to look at those extra things. You want to have a look at the year levels and you want to have a look at strands. So strands are really important because the Australian curriculum is broken down into language, literature and literacy, and also broken down into year levels. So I'm going to have a look at all of those strands, and I'm going to have a look at, you can choose a particular year level. I'm going to click on all of the primary years, click on submit, and hopefully that pops up for us. Doesn't want to work. Here we go. So you'll notice that you get a year level description, which is a basic overview on what is expected at each of those year levels. And then you can see here with the foundation links that it breaks each of the foundation curriculum descriptors down into language, literature, and literacy. So let's click on language. Here we have the foundation level language outcomes. So within each of the strands, so the strand is language, but then within language there are certain sub-strands. So you have language variation and change, language for interaction, which talks about the social concepts of interacting with people, then text structure and organization, as well as expressing and developing ideas. So all of these are under the language component. Now the language component looks at things like grammar, the structure of language, syntax, things like that, phonics, are all covered at foundation under that particular strand. Literature is looking more at, say, authors responding to literature, talking about favourite stories, telling stories. Now you'll notice that it's not broken down into reading and writing. That's not the way the curriculum is structured at the Australian curriculum level. It's in these particular strands. Now, one document that's going to be particularly helpful to you is a link that I've given you to the scope and sequence. The scope and sequence is actually all of these content descriptors placed together under strands and substrands. So have a look at this. Now this document for me is much easier to read and much easier to understand. So make sure that you pop in and have a look at it. Now remember I said that there was the language strand and underneath each was the substrand. So here are all the substrands and here are all of the curriculum links from prep to 6. So you can see the progression. So for example, if we scroll down, you can see here on the language strand that students need to use evaluative language. At prep, this is what it looks like, that students understand that language can be used to explore ways of expressing needs, likes and dislikes. And this is how it progresses through the years until eventually you get to grade 6 where you're using objective and subjective language to understand bias. So same strand of language, same substrand, but a progression of skills over the years. Now, when you're teaching, this is particularly important to you because you, even though you're teaching at grade 3, say, as I do, I need to look backwards to be able to differentiate for students who aren't quite at grade 3 level, but I also need to be able to extend and challenge students who are working above. So scope and sequence is very handy to use from a teaching point of view because you can see the progression of learning. Now you'll notice that some things like punctuation, concepts about print, you'll notice here that it says concepts about print finish at grade 5. So not all content descriptors are from prep. Some begin in grade 3 or 2 onwards, and some, such as phonics, don't head all the way into the upper primary years. So we can see that here. So there's a foundation level 1 and 2 descriptor of phonics, and then they assume that people are well versed in phonics by grade 3 and that there's no need to continue that descriptor. Have a scroll all the way through. You get into literature here, and then you'll look at literacy as well. As I said, you'll notice that it's not broken into reading, writing, and speaking and listening, but these skills are interwoven through the strands. So you'll see here listening for speaking and interacting purposes is one of the literacy sub-strands.